summertime was would be a problem. I thought it was just a France thing.
No.
So yeah, you guys
No,
have that
also
as well.
also here in Sweden. So
Great.
yeah, so we're on the same time
Hi,
zone.
Thomas.
Hello, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, all good, all good.
Nice.
How you guys?
So thank you for granting us that interview and taking time for us to do that. Just first and foremost, please feel free to ask us to repeat ourselves or anything. Our pronunciation might be very French, so yeah, feel free to make us repeat anytime.
Same, right back at you. Our pronunciation might be very Swedish, so it might be the same. Yeah.
I mean, I grew up watching PewDiePie. There's no concern there.
Okay, then we should be able to.
Great. Yeah. We used to make these interviews very chill. It's more like discussions. So yeah, don't hesitate to just rant and just talk forever if you want. There's no problem on our end. Except if you need to go.
You don't know what you just did. You have Thomas in the meeting. He's an expert on ranting, so you might be here all day now.
Master.
Yeah.
Me, yes. I'll contain myself. See.
All right.
Perfect.
So, yeah, we'll just go ahead and talk about what we're doing here. We are making a video on the Amnesia saga mostly, but we want to talk more of the story of the games. But we also explore the development, the production of the games, and sometimes make references to Penumbra and Soma. So yeah, it's going to be for our French audience. We'll see if we can make subtitles on the game on the video. But yeah, it's just a YouTube video that we're trying to make. It will be around 1 hour, I think, something like that. So yeah. Let me just. Yeah.
So yeah, feel free to say everything you want to talk about the development of the game or the game themselves. And if by inadvertent by mistake you say something you don't want to hear in the editing or the video, just tell us. We are recording this conversation, so if you said something you don't want to hear in the video, just ask me to cut that in the editing, and I will just cut it down.
Cool.
Great.
Yeah.
So I first want to go back to Penumbra and want to know how did Penumbra shape the way you make games today?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, but I mean, that's such a big question. Let me think about that for 2 seconds. No, but I think that I remember starting out the game and writing this scenario thingy. I don't have this writing at that. That's still around, I think, but there was like the player is trapped in a room, a monster is trying to come inside, you have to escape, what do you do? And a lot of thinking since has been this idea of creating interactive moments. So what you can do in a game is that here are some mechanics. let's just run with it. So like, I don't know, like Resident Evil is one of my all-time favorites, but they're like, yeah, you have zombies and you shoot zombies and you go with that. And I was always sort of annoyed by the amount of encounters you had in games, and I'm like, can't you make every encounter matter a bit more, wrap it into something else? And that's sort of how we started. So we did the scenario, and then always try and make sure that encounters came with something else. And I mean, so for instance, when you first see the dog in Penumbra, I'm not sure that's the best of cases, but we tried like, oh, you're trying to get here, you have this build up and so on and so forth. And Resident Evil has one of my favorite things from Resident Evil. Does anyone recall the shark encounter of the first game?
Oh, and that brings me back.
So the room floods with water, and you've seen signs of there being a shark, and all of a sudden you have a shark coming in, and it's such a cool because, oh, it's a shark. You know, I don't have to worry about it. But all of a sudden, oh no, I'm in water. And there's a shark coming in, and it becomes a story moment. It becomes more than just, oh, it's a shark enemy. It's like, it becomes part of a scene. And I'm sort of guessing that is sort of thing that there's so many ideas that sort of started out, but the sort of scenic approach was, and just to jump long into the future after that, you had also a similar thing with Bunker, right, Fredrik, where you had like, oh, really cool if you're in the dark and suddenly the generator goes off, right? As a sort of like a scenic moment to recreate through play and not just cutscene or anything.
Yeah, you have like I have like small video moments, I call them, in my head before we even like start to develop anything. For example, like walking in the bunker and all of a sudden being occupied with something else, and then all of a sudden it goes dark, you hear the monster crawl out of the hole, and that moment is for me. I had another one, for example, with the gun, and why we made the reloading of the gun fairly complicated for the player, and that is like you're sitting behind a shelf, you hear the stalker coming closer, and you all of a sudden realize, did I actually load that bullet? And you need to bring out the gun in front of you, look down, unload it slowly, whereas the stalker comes closer to you. Those kind of moments and scenes, if you wanted to call them that is what fuels the development. Yeah.
Yes. So I think that was settled early, from as a sort of like from Penumbra's development, where we had that like written down, and I remember writing this down as a sort of document, as a sequence of things, like, can we make the player live through this somehow? So I think that's sort of a big thing going forward that you see in all the games going forward.
Okay, so you started out from some kind of user scenario, and just build up from there. If I understand.
Yeah.
Well. Okay. Cool.
And just to extrapolate on that, I mean, if you look at the bunker again, the darkness, the generator going dark, and then having the mechanics, so all of these things, they kind of come together, like the mechanic of the flashlight. So all of a sudden you realize, in order to see anything now, I need to use this really loud flashlight. The monster is out looking for me, and that creates also like consecutive moments to these initial ones. So it's all becomes like a string of scenes that you want to try and capture, and as Thomas said, make the player live through them.
Yeah, so yes, that's another example that you can see in horror games as well, but it's a very common thing. Is so you're walking, the horror movie moment is this: you're walking down a hallway, and all of a sudden in the distance a shadow runs past. And when you're doing a game, because there's interactivity, right? The player determines they're walking. They might not be looking in the right direction at the right moment. So in many horror games, you know, the developers get scared by this. So they're like, oh no, but what if the player looks in the wrong direction? What are we gonna do? So let's do a cutscene. And so a core thing for us is no cutscenes. Like, what if the player misses the shadow? Then you have to think about, okay, so be it. Or even better, you have to think about, but no. Let's take a step back. We're not. If you're too locked down on recreating at a specific moment a specific scene, you're making a movie. But in a game, you're like, what is the scenario? What is the context? What are the systems that can recreate this feeling? And that came into jumping forward again, or jumping back again now from Bunker. In Amnesia, there is this moment where you have to hide in the closet. And whoop.
Oh, he disappeared. Well, I'm listening.
He went and hid in the closet.
He's doing all of the actions that we mentioned. Now he hid in the
It
closet.
would be fun if the light went out.
He's hiding in the closet.
Yeah.
He told me he has a bad connection at his job, so maybe he will reconnect in a few minutes. Should
Should I go on or should we wait?
You can go on. You can go on, and then we will maybe continue on another aspect of this of the way you translate, not translate. You transpose the horror genre from movie to a video games, and completely avoid cinematics to privilege the gameplay. I would like to go on another aspect on that, but you can continue your explanation for now.
Yeah, but just a simple. So in Silent Hill 2, you have this moment that is a cutscene that I really liked, where you're hiding from Pyramid Head. So you come across him, and he's doing some weird shit with the mannequins in a kitchen. Oh, it's back. So as I was saying, in Silent Hill 2, you come across Pyramid Head doing weird shit in the kitchen, and James, the protagonist, hides in a closet there. And that's all a cutscene. It's a very tense, a very cool scene. But the thought at that point went through my head, played it ages ago. I was like, it would be cool if you played this. So I was really happy when you could recreate the moment like that in Dark Descent. Whereas like this, I think there is a prompt or something like that sort of hints at the player or what they should be doing. But they're really playing that moment, looking through the closet by using the analog controls. And like Fredrik said, a lot of the systems here comes in together to one. So in Amnesia, you can't look at the monster because it drains your sanity. So you only want to do quick peeks. You have the analog controls, which allows you to peek through the closet door just ever so slightly. And then obviously you can't fight the monster. So you're not going to rush out and try and, bash their head in or something like that. So all of this context comes together in which is a very simple scene. Like now it's like when you say it's like, that's not that hard to do, right? But it takes a lot to explain to the player that, and to my knowledge, there wasn't any, like I think you did it in Clock Tower, perhaps, some closet hiding, but then it was very much like a mechanism. But here it's like comes through the system implicitly, so it's more like an emergent feature. It's not like we have a hide in the closet mechanic. It's that there's a lot of systems that then allows for this mechanic to happen. So that was very cool, and that was one of the sort of what I was very proud of doing with Dark Descent, at least. And again, it was that sort of came all through writing this document on Penumbra and starting to think about the games in those terms.
Okay. Yeah, there was nothing quite like it at the time. So And now it's almost a staple of horror games. Be able to hide in a closet and
Yeah, like you have in Alien Isolation
Yeah.
right now.
just hide. Yeah.
And I would like to ask you, because we are talking about the importance of making live the moment to the player instead of just showing a cinematic, because the cinematic you talk about in Silent Hill 2 is very emblematic of from the game, but it will be really more intense for a player to really play this moment. So we are cinephile. We like movies. So we would like to ask you if in Amnesia: The Dark Descent there is somehow it is somehow inspired by Pascal Laugier, the film's Martyrs. I'm not sure of the pronunciation.
Martyrs.
Martyrs.
Yeah, I think that's one of those. It's one of those fairly gory movies, right? I think I've seen it. I can't recall it. It's what's two girls trapped in a mansion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are quite trapped at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
One of them is like followed by some shadow, and the purpose of the cult is to go through.
Yeah. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that connection. So that wasn't the inspiration for the shadow is from Lovecraft's short story The Hound, where there's this hound that sort of almost like Baskerville's hounds that follows. There's some grave robbers that gets an amulet. And there's this hound. You hear their hound howling outside their window at night, and so on. So that was the inspiration from that monster, not the movie Martyrs. I'm referring. But I've seen the movie, but I didn't make the connection to that. Perhaps I did before. No, not that particular one.
Okay, so you prefer to take inspiration. Sorry, go on. So you prefer to inspire from more book or movies?
It's all over the place. From my end, like now I'm thinking about so I mean it's other games. There's a lot of early games are Penumbra and Amnesia inspired by actually interactive fiction games, like book games. But movies as well. Now I'm like thinking about what are any, but I can't recall any like top of my head. I really like Bram Stoker's Dracula, the movie. So Dracula is obviously an inspiration on that. And again, it's sort of like the idea is taking emotions and scenes you see there, and it's like, how could we do that in a game? I know there's a lot of film inspirations for Bunker, right? Fredrik?
Yeah, but also games and books, I think. So, I mean, film is World War One. What's it? 1914? Is it? Yeah, that movie. But also, I mean, when it comes to games, Resident Evil had an inspiration with the lockers. Resident Evil 2, I think, the remake, they had some locker in the police station that kind of triggered an inspiration for the locker room in the bunker. Books, I don't know if it's really like connected to it, but I really like reading The Mist with Stephen King, for example, and I don't see this resemblance now, but I maybe closed in environment and having some kind of haunting creature outside, but yeah, no, I think it's just a mix of tons of stuff. And I don't think, for me, I think I get moments, like we were talking about scenes earlier. Maybe those come easier from movies. but then like bigger picture and feeling comes from books when it comes to me personally, and then when it comes to specific mechanics, maybe they come from other games. So like it's a puzzle in that sense.
Yeah, just on the movies, I remark on that. I remember this was probably prior to Penumbra when I started out. When was I? Early 20s, something like that. I had this idea of going through every horror movie ever, or at least the disturbing. So I found a list on the internet called the most disturbing movies. So I just took that list and I went through all of them at night, which is like quite a few. I think I skipped a few of these because there's some very weird movies. But so all of that is very hard to say, like give those direct inspiration, because you sort of amass a bunch of stuff over the years. But I know also from overall from Amnesia movies, I really liked to nail that sort of gothic feel to it. And what I think is, and I think there's similar things here with Bunker as well, and what really worked with Dark Descent is that normally you say that, well, you should be original in your setting, etc., and so on. But for horror games, I really think that, and I've seen that with the games that we made, the more grounded the background, the better effect from the players. So you have like the player recognize themselves instantaneously. So in Dark Descent, there's like, you're in a castle, there's thunder outside. It's cliche like almost, but the player knows what's up. They don't have to do a lot of heavy thinking to get around, to understand their situation. They can focus all in on being immersed in that experience, in that environment. So taking all sort of inspiration from movies and how it's depicted there, how castles are made and so on, all help us build an environment that just feels familiar to the player, in a bad way, I guess, in that I don't want to be here, get me out of here. And yeah, there's all these sort of like, I think Bunker feels also very fueled about that, where it's like players are reminded that shit, I'm in World War One. Oh no.
Yeah, I was painfully reminded that when you go through that ladder and you say, oh, I might be out of there, and you just get shot the second you just put your head up, and that I mean that works. You know that you just leave a hell for another, and it's it is I think that's the horror culture that we just have now at this point.
But it's also kind of like a framework for me when I think about these things. I've played a bunch of games after releasing the Bunker and got really like into playing the Arcane Studio games, Prey and Dishonored. And I have an example there actually where I absolutely love Dishonored 2. So this is not a critique, but there is one level there where you start using time travel and going back and forth. And all of a sudden I could actually, when I had played that level, sense that I lost a slight immersion from that, because all of a sudden the framework that had been built up in what I understood what was like what I could expect from a daily like experience here at home except for not going around killing people quietly, and all of a sudden that framework was broken a bit. And I think that ties into what you were saying earlier as well, that the more we build up this framework around the player that they understand and that they feel they can relate to, the more immersion we get out of it.
So mad this problem from the get-go, because we built the world that was very complex, and we're like, yeah, we're going to show this off, and it backfired a lot in early versions, where the player was just what is this? But this is crazy saying, oh, there's this thing, and they didn't think about anything else. They were just constantly trying to process the new environment. So we had to like, let's make it simpler. Let's make it like cleaner. Let's not do anything that is going to distract them. And you often have to. It's often better to add a little bit of spice, and it just goes home much better. And that's something I think about a lot in, say, monster design and so on. Like the best monsters are often, I recognize that, except for that part. What the fuck is that? And then that sort of stands out. But if the whole monster is just, I have no idea what this is, you can't contextualize it. You don't get that reaction that you're aiming for, and that's something that sort of goes hand in hand with story and so on. And overall, I think that the sort of the favorite places that players report from are like familiar places with some sort of spice. So in Rebirth, for instance, the fort is one of those places that people found the most interesting. But it's also very grounded, a lot of recognizable features. But then there's these monsters crawling around, and then that sort of made was better. And then we have like something like a cistern, and all of a sudden it becomes a bit more weird, and players sort of lose that.
And then we have the dark world.
Yeah. And that's also like it's sort of like a good example for another really old game is the first Half-Life, where they get into Xeno, and there's gameplay issues with that level, but almost no one likes the Xeno and levels in Half-Life, because you want this sort of you like aliens in a familiar environment. That's cool, but aliens in an alien environment's like it's not as interesting. You sort of, it's much more interesting to wonder. I wonder where these aliens belong and so on, and that's more. So you're, but sometimes you like you need to go somewhere and you don't realize until later on, like, oh no, we did this too much, and then you're like, you can't do anything about it. But overall, over the years, that's something you learn to just have that sort of like just a little bit. It's when it works the best.
I love that this is turning into a horror game design masterclass.
Yeah, it's
I'm
really
taking
interesting.
it.
Also, I have a question, because you are talking about. In fact, in Rebirth, we saw a bit more of the real universe of. Sorry, I don't remember the name of the creature who live in the other world.
The Wraith or the Shadow or
Both.
yeah.
The ghouls. No, the ghouls are humans transformed in this world. But the fact that you go in this world, so you know now their environment, you discover something. It's less interesting than having them in a familiar environment, like you said in Half-Life for the Xenos in the laboratory. So is that why you choose in the bunker to just maybe avoid a part of the lore, to just focus on the real environment from the First World?
I mean, it's so difficult. I was in an interview yesterday as well, and I got this similar question. What generated it? It's difficult to know now. I think, first of all, like World War I was mentioned during Rebirth. Like, I think that was the writer who mentioned it during that it would be fun to have a setting in the World War I, and then that stuck as an idea. And then the gun, like I remember I thinking, can't we do something more like take it another step in gameplay when it comes to hiding versus like having a gun as a tool and as a defense mechanism. And then everything just started coming together, and I think in a sense we wanted to make something that was very tactile, very like natural to the player. Small in the beginning, it was an idea. The idea was for a few weeks it was meant to be a DLC for Rebirth, but we realized very early on that this is a whole different beast, a very different game compared to Rebirth. So we disconnected it and made it a standalone game. So I guess it's a slight reaction to it. We were also talking about it being like a slice of life in the Amnesia universe, kind of like, instead of this grand, like taking you to the origin of certain things of the Amnesia lore. Instead, we just have a slice of life in during World War One. But this is difficult to say, but I think certainly there's that aspect played into it a bit.
But it also plays really, really well with the established mechanics, which Rebirth didn't. I mean, I just recall there was the big thing with Rebirth. And again, this is so because we decided, I think I decided, it's interesting how these ideas form, because I had read Skeletons of the Sahara, which is a great sort of like survivor. It happened in the 19th century. There were some sailors that got stranded in Sahara and they went through hell, basically. It's a very cool survival story. So like, yeah, this should be what we make the game. So it's like the desert environment. But the desert is like the worst horror environment ever. And there is, you can see, for miles, which is bad. It's not dark, like deserts are hot. So it's like there's no shadows, and even worse, there's no doors. You remember Fredrik? They're like, can't we have more doors? Like we had such an issue with doors in Rebirth. We couldn't have them, or just lights to light. So Bunker really like, oh yeah, there's a lot of doors in Bunkers. There's a lot of lights in Bunker. And another thing that we also had, we had this monster that I remember going back. When we first made Rebirth, I'm not sure how if you were in these. Can you remember these? Because in Dark Descent, a really good thing that I like from a design standpoint was that the monsters disappear after a while, because it's very annoying having them roaming constantly, and it makes the go and hide mechanic make sense, because you can hide and then it goes away after a while, which really fuels that, because that makes that into a viable tactic. Otherwise, you have to sneak past it. But players were like, "Where did the monster go?" It's like, no, I don't know. The poofed. Like there's even like in the community like called the poofer, which is the monster just going up in smoke. But so then early on in Rebirth, like, oh, they could crawl through holes. And there was like thinking about how we could do stuff with that, but it never went much. Like I can't. There was, yeah.
That we did a prototype for like a stalking behavior going in and out of holes, the ghouls, but we realized fairly early that the linearity of the game, the game has a very strong focus on story. So the linearity and the story was driving the whole game, and having a stalking entity for such a short amount of space, where then like encounter space, didn't make sense, because we go through the levels fairly quickly in Rebirth, and we had to do that in order to tell a story, and that's why we kind of went away from that one. But we had that idea as well, and we brought it further into the Bunker project.
Yes, it's slotted really, really well with like just adding holes and stuff like that. So I think there was but I think you were, because what I can recall from it is that you just said, yeah, World War One Bunker. I would call the game the Bunker, because I can't recall there being like, I'm guessing it was in the back of your head, but it from what I can recall, it popped. But I think there's a like. Just thinking back at it, there was all of these like a perfect storm coming together with the holes, the damn doors that we didn't have, and suddenly we can have it all. So it's very nice where you could do that, and that's Rebirth had that issue, as you say, where you have to go from A to B, and there was no time to really get into that. We even had, which also annoyed me, we had this sort of climbing mechanic for the ghouls where they could climb up. And never used. We could have fit it in.
That would have required more verticality in the levels, and all of a sudden we'd expand the levels, and
and so you're sort of, it's an interesting one of those interesting design things where you make things that you think are insignificant choices. So desert, storyline that moves forward. What can go wrong? And all of a sudden you have huge constraints and shackles that sort of like dictates what you can and cannot do. And it's like, can we do this? No, we did this. And you sort of set up obstacles for yourself. And you just have to sort of live with that and make the best out of it. And I think, I think there's a lot of cool stuff in Rebirth, but you also get annoyed when you're like, oh, this is such a cool thing to do, and can't we do this? No. Can't we have a door? No, can't have a door.
So it's safe to say it was a clear reaction to those kind of shackles for me as well with Bunker, just since the story, like I also came in as a creative leader halfway through or something on Rebirth, but the story was the driver. And then just coming out of it and having all of these ideas on gameplay. And then Bunker, the first version, the first prototype had no story in it. It was the generator, the flashlight, the stalking behavior, the holes, the bunker. It's basically what it was the first prototype.
But that is the story, right? This is the scene. So that's the sort of like, I'm guessing...
But not an unfolding or linear, no plot, no linear plot to it or anything like that. Yeah, we have that now in the game, but the first thing we really wanted to do now was like these ideas or these scenes in the head that we wanted to recreate.
It's interesting thinking back at, like, there's a lot of connections with the Dark Descent and the sort of design stuff there as well, where it has the similar sort of vibe where it's like, get out, and you want to, like, because the focus then becomes on the scenarios, like I said, the scenes that we're setting up and trying to make those work, because that's in the end is what's interesting. Yeah? And if you have too many like specific, plot points to hit, you're sort of, it gets harder. You get into that sort of like, as I said before, seeing a shadow on the wall, and you're like, but can't we do this in a scenario? No, we need to do it now. And you're like, oh my God, we need to do this now. Yes, at this very point. Then you get into like, okay, it's a cutscene. and instead of like taking a step back and rethinking how you can like making it into a sort of scene. So a lot of storytelling overall, how we're doing it is thinking about context and so on, and that's overall where it worked the best, honestly. Where it's simplistic, it has a sort of experiential goal, and then the sort of systems, context, environment, and all of those are just work towards that instead.
Okay, so you kind of already answered to my next question, so I jump to the next one, which has nothing to do with what we just said. But I was always wondering how did you perceive A Machine for Pigs then, and how do you perceive it now?
Oh, okay. So I remember where the idea for it was from. So me and Jens, Jens was, I founded the company together with Jens, and he left the company 10 years back. So, so we were sitting at, I think it was GDC, it's like and we said, we should make more out of Amnesia. So it's like, oh, could some other studio make it? And then I had been in contact with Dan from Chinese Room, and it's like, because I liked their stuff and thought that would be an interesting, like having them do something about it. So we talked about it, and then they got to do that, and they had like grand ambitions that were very limited by the engine and so on and so forth. But it's such a weird thing. I really liked what you did. I think they did some really cool story ideas. They did all the things that we wanted, but they also had the thing that was missing from that game, just to be frank, is the systemic grounding. So there was ideas at the beginning to have filth be the new sanity mechanic, but then sort of other things that wasn't. There's these sort of airlocks to go through that was supposed to be removing filth from you and so on. So Dan had all of these really cool ideas, but he never really got to the forefront of the game, which is a shame, because I think that then we could have had more of this sort of stuff. And there's a lot of reasoning why it didn't go like that. But I mean, I'm sort of like we talked about that, how much that sort of, because it's one thing that you learn, and I've heard this from other developers as well that did other stuff. I remember hearing an interview with Harvey. Now I can't recall his name. The creator director of the Dishonored series. Now that Fredrik mentioned that, in going from the original Deus Ex to Deus Ex 2, and you underestimate the investment and expectations fans have, and I think we did that totally with Amnesia, because they were expecting something, they were delivered something else, and should have been thinking about that a bit more, how I did that. So it probably, like, from an economic standpoint, sort of hurt the franchise. But at the same time, I'm also sort of happy that we could do something like that. Like, from an economic standpoint, we should have gone the Outlast way, because they're like refining on that experience in really cool ways. It's like they're really going all in on that. Whereas I guess we're a bit more artsy fartsy, so we're like just trying to, what can you do? What other directions can you take it in, and learn a lot. So I learned a lot of lessons. There was a lot of cool stuff, just how music can affect scenes, how you can do stuff, how various environments work, and so on, and also sort of what things can go wrong, what sort of puzzles work and don't work, and so on, that you learn from just checking out and doing with the Machine for Pigs. Hard to say, like go into more. I'm not sure I don't really feel like my how I view it has changed. I really think they did a really cool job at it, and I really love what it is. But then again, from an economic sense, it's probably not the best thing to have done. But I think it's a cool sort of idea on how on the franchise and so on and so forth. But yeah, hard to, I don't know. I don't have any better thoughts than that. Do you have any like anything I missed, Fredrik, on that particular game? You weren't here when it was made.
I weren't here either. No, so it's difficult to say how it's changed. No, I don't have anything to add on that.
Okay. Thank you for being so open about it, because I know the public has is not so happy about the game, but at the same point, I think there is a part of the community that really loves the game. And I just discovered it recently. This is the last one I didn't do, and I think the story, especially, is really good, and it really translates well with the gameplay.
The music is so Jessica's time in music is like the final song is just just breathtaking, to be honest. So I'm just happy that exists. If nothing else, just having the story, the writing, just all of that coming into existence is sort of worth it in the end. But again, I know the fan reception. They're expecting something else.
If you want to ask the next question, Jean?
Yes, thank you for sharing all this about A Machine for Pigs, because just for my point of view, I discovered this game by the video from Jacob Jeller, who make an essay talking about A Machine for Pig, and I didn't knew the game instead of watching this video. And then I was like, I make the first Amnesia. I'm not sure if I will make a Machine for Pigs. I watched the Jacob Jeller video and I was like, okay, that's really, really interesting. And he said absolutely the same thing. Like, you can think whatever you want about the gameplay, but the thing is, the most interesting things about this game is mostly the story. But everyone is absolutely sure the music, the ending song is absolutely amazing. So I think everyone can agree on that.
Yeah.
So that's a question about H.P. Lovecraft, because we can have some deception on direct Lovecraft adaptation on games. I'm thinking like Call of Cthulhu, the last one went out in 2012, I think, something like that. 2013. I don't remember exactly.
It was more recent than that.
Yeah.
I think it was around 2017 or something.
Oh,
Focus.
that recent.
Yeah, it was the Cyanide game.
Yeah.
That came out in 2017 or something. Yep.
Yeah, so it's kind of difficult to make direct adaptation of Lovecraft universe in video games. So how would you feel to directly adapting H.P. Lovecraft's works?
Yes, so I actually did that for my first horror game 25 years back. So I'm sort of glad I got it out of my system, to be honest. I still feel it, because then you have your Cthulhu Fagna. You can write that line at once, and you're like you've done your tribute, and you can sort of leave it behind. A huge Lovecraft fan. My problem with Lovecraft. So just to sum it up, I read a lot of the stories. And I had a vague understanding of what it was about, and I loved that understanding that I had. Then I went out and bought the RPG, and then they had sheets of all of the different deities and how they fit together. And I'm like, this is less fun now. I liked my version better, and I think that is honestly the problem. I think that I played all. If there is a Cthulhu game, I probably played it. But it's just that they say, "Oh, now you have a deep one." I'm like, I know what a deep one is. It's not that interesting. Yeah. If there is a, Cthulhu, some manuscript mentions Cthulhu. It's like, okay, there's no horror in that. I think that the right way of adapting Lovecraft is taking the ideas, and then if you want to have the 20s environment, go for that, but don't use new things. Like because there was already Lovecraft fan fiction existed in Lovecraft's lifetime, because had all of these friends, like the writer that did Conan, the writer that did the novel for Psycho. I can't recall their names right now, but they all wrote their stories. And they added to it. They could have mentioned Cthulhu. There was some novels like the Necronomicon, the Vermis, the Mysterious. These books pop up, but they added to it. There was new entities. They didn't do the same thing. But now it's like people that do adaptations just takes the RPG and rolls a die and let's have this thing and this thing. And that's I think that's the wrong way. and I think it's much more interesting, and that's similar how I think that how you should do with the Amnesia thing. If for new games, like you take this sort of backbone and then you bring something new to it. You bring something unexpected, because otherwise it's just some sort of fan service in the end, and that's not going to recreate that feeling, because Lovecraft stories readings, it starts with a letter someone receives, and it's like, it's this weird thing happening to me, come visit my remote cabin. And then but if you know from the opening chapter, oh yeah, it's one of those, I don't know, this character or whatever, that there's no mystery to it. And I think that's totally what's lacking from the Lovecraft adaptations. They're just taking the same thing, and for I don't like that. I think that's how they fail. I like the atmosphere and so on, but I would much rather not have it being Dagon or whatever thing, but having it something else. And I'm like, wow, what's this? That was what I like, and that's what I think is failing with them. And in some sense, how we would do it, we're already doing it. And I think that, so for instance, Soma, I think is a sort of what I'd call a neo-Lovecraftian, in that, so Lovecraft, there was a new scientific things coming in, quantum mechanics, relativity, and all of that stuff. So like the expansion of the universe and so on happened. That is so much stuff that happened at this point. And he took all of those things and all the fears that come with them and boiled them into stories. Soma is that same thing, but taking neurology as the science of the mind and boiling that into a horror story instead. So that's what I think is sort of the right legacy. Obviously, I think that because that's what we're doing, but that's in my mind where the failure is. If you're doing a Lovecraft game and you're using just taking things from the RPG, I think you're doing it wrong.
That's very interesting, because I think I can agree, because once you know the extent of the threat, there's no fear anymore. So yeah, that's that absolutely makes sense. Just before I ask you the next question, I think Google is going to to end the call without our consent. So if you're okay with that, I will send you another link to switch on another call. I guess that works.
Yep.
I'll send it to in the conversation. Where is it? Yeah. And we'll just switch on that one, if that's fine.
Yeah. Should we switch now?
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah, I'm gonna
let's
click. See you on the flip side.
Yeah. Attends, mais j'ai un souci, ça ne marche pas.
Ouais, ça semblerait ne pas marcher.
Ça me dit que ça ne marche pas. Attends. Hein?
Attends, est-ce que c'est parce qu'on est toujours ici? Bon.
Ça a marché?
Non, non, là je suis revenu sur l'ancien lien.
Putain. Merde. Par une réunion instantanée. Ah ouais, attends, je vais faire ça plutôt. Est-ce que tu pourras envoyer du coup le truc à Ouais. Tu pourras l'envoyer
Alors, de quoi?
à Fredrik sur Twitter.
Sur Twitter. Alors attends, j'envoie quoi? Ah, merde, je t'entends plus, tu bloques.
Twitter, moi ici. Ouais. Je vais t'envoyer ce lien-là.
Ok,
Hop, celui-là. Il faudra juste envoyer ce lien-là, le dernier.
ok.
Ça va marcher.
Let's go on X, non pas
Tout de
Xbox.
suite.
À tout de suite.
À tout de suite. Yes. Alors je vais les inviter directement. Hop. Je vais mettre mince, également. C'est une galère ce truc là. J'aurais dû le faire avec le compte de la boîte en fait parce que c'est. Hop. Je l'aurais envoyé par email.
Hello.
Hello.
Great. Yeah.
It's always the
Sorry.
case. The technical
Yeah.
issue.
Sorry. That did not turn out. Yeah.
No problem.
I was even get into it when
Yourself,
yeah.
I've sent the link to Thomas. Let's see if he.
Thank you. Okay. So yeah, feel free to tell us when you need to go if you have any obligation. So
Yeah.
we don't.
For me, it's okay. I don't know how it is for Thomas. So there we go.
Okay. Thanks. Hello
Hi.
again. Sorry about that. I'll go ahead and ask you the next question if that's okay. Yeah. So in an Ars Technica interview, Thomas, talking about the first Amnesia, you said you did not fully capture what makes us evil. Do you still feel that way? And how would you do it now with all the experience you earned?
Okay.
Years.
So you hear me, by the way? Yeah, okay. This seems to be working.
Yeah.
So just checking. Take his here. That's a good question. How would I do it differently? I mean, there was some of it, but I think so. I think that in order to do this, it wouldn't be Amnesia. I think that the thing that you have to, there's two opposites. So there's one, we talked about building scenes. So you'd have to build scenes around that, but the scenes that come naturally, where the story drives you, a story as in the setting, the events, the context, the characters, is the monster encounters and things surrounding that. And the other thing is it becomes more background. So, but I think that you'd have to make it. You have to think about interactive scenes, at least a few of them, where you sort of do it. There is a bit of it in Amnesia with the corpse with the bag on their head and so on, but I'd like you need to put more focus on it. It's similar, I guess, to Bunker also has a similar scene like that. But again, that choice there there is an interesting choice there in both games, but it's sort of overshadowed by so much else. So I think there's a focus thing, yeah, and that's sort of what we learned with Soma, just putting more and more focus on that specific thing. So I think that's how I would do it now, and rethink a lot of things like setting and whatnot. But it's an interesting question. It's like my brain starts thinking about it now. I don't think I have time to go into how I would go about it. But I think the focus is the main key ingredient. And I think there's also there is this thing where you want to do too much in game development. I heard this from a lot of designers. Is like you want to throw all your ideas into your game, and it gets up almost distracting. And I know from most of the stuff, the games, like a lot of the game often comes through after a sort of editorial process, almost like a cutting process that's done because we got to ship in 2 years or 1 year or whatnot. Let's just focus in on something, yeah. And then you cut a lot of stuff, and then the game comes together. But you wanted to do 100 of other things as well, and you need to do that at an early stage, and because otherwise, at that when you have so much stuff, you can't really. It's much harder to pick what you want to be focusing on because you already have a mass, and you can just you have to like, this doesn't really help, this doesn't really help. You have to like see where the game is heading, where the game is sort of telling you what it wants to be. Yeah. So you have to have that focus early on. I think that's sort of my answer. But I also just want to where I think and again that I think was really another one of those things that went well. So Fredrik mentioned earlier that Bunker was a DLC, which meant that it was instantaneously constrained, and then it became a much bigger game, and that's a sort of interesting way of how it got all of that focus. Had it been from the outset we're gonna make a big game, then it might have been a different one because you wanted perhaps to cram in more stuff at the beginning. You're always like, I'm really like Fredrik always nagging me about being a time optimist, which is a bad characteristics I get. Yeah. But how do you feel about that, Fredrik? I mean, I was curious. Like I think we talked about it, but I think that sort of the starting out as a DLC was really like a sort of blessing in disguise to some degree.
Yeah, it was constrained, but it was also instantly focused on gameplay. I think the core, like it grew from gameplay, also due to it being a DLC. Kind of like now we just want to make something different on the gameplay side, and I really love that with our studio that we don't fully commit to one way of going in this, and we can experiment with stuff even within the same franchise like we've done with Amnesia. And I think so for example, like it's looking at Bunker now, you for example just take the simple example, like there's a save lamp in the center of the map. That's very different from how the other games play out. Like if you die, you wake up, maybe the monster is still there or maybe it's moved away, but here it's like if you fail, you're gonna start over here. So we take a lot of different approaches, but and yeah, so trying to tie it back to what you're saying, the DLC gave us that opportunity as the idea. Otherwise we'd probably be going in, okay, so we start this track of pre-production, this track of pre-production, this and gameplay, story and everything, and then it could have easily grown into something else. Yes.
Right. Okay. That's interesting.
That's really interesting.
Uh,
Also, I think the idea of restarting where you die. Oh, sorry. Go on. Ah, you're with us?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. It was it? Sorry. It might have been a very delayed.
Yeah, it was lagging. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just trying to say that I think there is some of that idea that what makes us evil in Rebirth, where you have to torture that guy in order to save the child, and I do think that kind of capture it well. Well, you do things, you do evil things because you think you have good intentions, and that actually really made me think. And I spend a lot of time in that room trying to process the thing and trying to see what I could do to not do it. And also just finding the right pieces to make it work. But I really spent a lot of time thinking about it.
Are you aware that you could decide to not do it? You could just walk out and down to the shuttle station.
You're evil.
The door is just a bit disguised because the power went, so it's dark out there. But you can open that door and go out, so you can.
Oh my
leave
god.
without.
Okay.
But
so
even
yeah.
like Rebirth, yes, on the like evil or whatever you want to call it. But even the ending is kind of tied into that, and we build it up through the loading screens throughout, trying to make the player connect, like through Tasi, to the situation of having lost a child one time and having the second chance of having a new child, and then coming to this kind of mega situation where everyone in this world is being tortured currently. What's more important to you? What's evil in that situation? Is it ending the suffering of all of these people because your motherly feelings are too strong and you're having this second chance, or or leaving, going to Paris, leaving this world behind, but having to maybe do some horrible stuff to keep your child alive in Paris instead. And shame for you guys if you live in Paris, if you took that decision. Tassi might be roaming around half ghoulish now, looking for Vitae. Yeah.
Yeah, I would never choose Paris, even over everything else.
Yeah, okay. No, so I think that sense is even in the end of the game, and before that, the torture scene, as you say, is also like a heads up for that. Yeah.
Yeah. John, if you want to ask the
Yeah.
next one.
Absolutely. I
curious
think
about
we know the answer, but are you done with Amnesia?
We're unsure.
Do you know the answer?
I don't know the answer. I have no idea what that's the
We
answer.
don't know the answer.
And, we'll have to
Okay.
see a bit. I mean, it's interesting because it's sort of, we don't have it in the pipeline now, but I mean, we just made an Amnesia game. It depends on what sort of, where, if something emerges where it's like, oh, this would be interesting to do, then you sort of do that. So I don't think you're really done with any of your sort of IPs. It's more like when the opportunity arises, you do something with it, and what makes sense.
I just want to say here, like from a studio perspective, and so I came in after Jens came in 2015 to the studio, and from a studio perspective, now it's become this kind of like, we have 2 projects in the pipeline, and it's turned out to become like Thomas is the creative lead on one of the projects, and I'm the creative lead on the other one. But what I really appreciate with this studio and with Thomas, so it's it's a thing for you, Thomas. Here, I'm gonna give you some love here, but that is that it's down to I think it's a realization that if the person kind of envisioning the project doesn't really burn or what you say, like for the whole idea, then it's not going to end up becoming the best it can be. So we don't really go and say, okay, making another game on Amnesia, that would be financially more viable than not making a game on Amnesia. Instead, it's like, okay, if we make a game on Amnesia and we don't want to make that game and we have no vision, no creative force behind it, then it's going to end up kind of ruining the franchise instead, maybe. So it's all down to what we have as a vision and an idea, and that there's a power behind it to fulfill it. That's how we make the best end product. and we go along those lines, right, Thomas? It's the philosophy in a way for the studio. That's how
there's never been a sort of creating a franchise has never been a goal of that sort. So it's more like, here's an interesting idea, let's explore it. So it's more like that. And I mean, I think that's clear in all the games, where I think the only one that we start, but I mean both also worth noting just how all Amnesia games have started. So first Amnesia game obviously just started, that was the first one, but A Machine for Pigs was like, asking Dan in the Chinese room, so like, yeah, we want to make another Amnesia. Do you have any ideas? Like, what would you be interested in doing? Yeah. And then they had ideas, and then so we went along with that. Rebirth was also a similar thing. It was like, what about this setting and so on. I'm guessing that is the one where that sort of started out. I think that's the thing where we learned the lesson, because I think that so I've been like historically like more the lead on that project, and I wanted to step aside to focus on I already done so. Like it's a long history, but I wanted to do another project on the side and do other stuff, and then we needed to have someone else. But then like I had to step aside. We had to rework it. So the beginnings were that sort of idea focused, and it more like a lot of ideas coming in and then trying to make something out of it. And I think that sort of put a lot of the things we talked about, where it's like the plots sort of went in the way of some creature behaviors and so on. And I think a lot of the issues stems from that. So it's much better to like start on an idea state and sort of go with that.
It's kind of interesting to look at a bunker, because I was supposed to work on a different project, but I came like saying, can't we do the bunker with the gun, with the generator and all of that? And just I had the idea and the vision for that, and then we put the other thing aside for a while, and then we went with that. So yeah, it's the way to go. I think it's where you get the best.
Yeah, but also when it comes to horror and so on, I think it's the other feeling that I'm sort of getting across is that if it's there's a lot of tricks that you pull that gets harder to pull on another game. So you want to continuously evolve to bring something new to the table. Otherwise, it's just gonna be like, how do we made a sequel Amnesia? I think that if you had gone all in on doing that, it would have declined, and you have to sort of step back and do something else. So in a sort of sense. I mean, we wouldn't have gotten or something out of that. So it's interesting, actually. The best games often comes from as well being dissatisfied by the previous game in some way. So I mean, Soma came to birth from themes aren't get across enough. Let's make a theme-based game, and then Bunker was like, the encounters aren't coming across. Let's like make an encounter game, and so a lot of ideas come from that sort of frustration, and then obviously that is not the sort of a good cornerstone for franchise building, I think, because then you know the audience expects more of the same, and I mean, then if you look at from an economic standpoint, the Machine for Pigs is actually pretty good, because right now if a new Amnesia games comes out, no one expects anything. You know what? It's all over the place at this point. So that's an interesting aspect of it, I guess, as well, and just making it ideas driven.
Yeah, and I think that makes the game stands on their own much more. They really stand as their own art pieces, and they just continue to exist through time that way. I mean, Amnesia: Dark Descent is still incredible to play today because it is strongly mechanically based, and in my opinion it is still very effective. Even Penumbra, I still love it to this day. I think it still works very well. So yeah, that's yeah, I think that's still a good approach, in my opinion.
Yeah, if we were to make a more refined version of the Dark Descent, then the first Dark Descent wouldn't be as fun to play, maybe.
No, but you talked. We talked
probably.
Yeah, but we talked about that as well. I mean, I think it's still a thing, but in our games as well. But if you have like a series, as well, like the most typical example is FIFA. You don't play last year's FIFA. You play like the old FIFAs don't continue to sell, but you want to play the new one. I mean, it's different, but you have other franchises that Fredrik went to off. So
I'm here, by the way.
Yeah,
so it's
you just turned into an icon. But the thing is, again, that all of our games are still also from a financial standpoint, like you say, Amnesia is still selling pretty well, and Penumbra too, which is crazy because they're ancient at this point. Were we doing Penumbra 10 at this point? Like, I think they would be more like subjected to old history in a different way. But
yeah. So this is a weird one, okay? But let me. So many of your stories take place in France, or are somehow linked to France. Do you actually like us, or do you just want to make every scenario possible to see us suffer?
Oh yes, it's actually so. I mean, Canada is also like, obviously. I think it is Eastern, right? So it's Eastern Canada, which is more French, right? This is how I recall. But yeah, no, there actually is that. To be honest, the thing is this: when we do a placement, we make sure that it's not in the USA. so it's because all characters are from there. So there's been and not from Sweden either. I don't like having, so it shouldn't be Swedish, shouldn't be American. So we just do somewhere in between. And I don't know where that ended up with France so much, but it's now you say it's like Justine, you have, I'm not sure there's any, or Descent doesn't have any, does that have French connections? No, I can't recall. But that's then Prussia. So it's been constantly us trying to find locations that are that hasn't been done before. So that's more where we're going for. So Canada come from. We needed a country with an English speaker that was near the Atlantic Ocean. So it's like don't go to America. So let's not, because everyone does that. So it's like, what else could we do? Okay, Canada. So then it became Canada. And similar things has happened with the other ones. The bunker kind of came from the French fortress from Algeria. So that was just like, because we had a lot of French assets. So it's like, let's reuse some of them for bunker. And then Algeria came from, I have no idea why Algeria is in Dark Descent. Can't recall who it was, me or the writer Mikael at the time who came up with it. But then because there was French forces there, so I don't know. But there's no.
That's funny.
There's no bad blood with French people. It just comes across, but it's pretty funny actually. Now that you say it, there's a lot of French connection in there. But it's us just trying to figure out other new interesting places to go.
The French have been everywhere, so it's difficult to miss.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
I have a weird question too about a specific object in Amnesia. There is this star-shaped stone. We saw sometime, we mentioned sometime in games or DLC. I think Justin mentioned also the sharp stone. And will we finally see or know what it's about, this sharp-shaped stone?
The star-shaped stone?
Yeah.
Yeah, the star-shaped substone. That's a weird word for French.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking about what is that starship? I'm breaking the mystery. I can't recall. But okay. So I can give a different answer on this. So the way that all of these stories have worked, it's not like I don't know. You shouldn't say how the sausage is made, I guess, but it's sort of interesting. So every Amnesia game has had a new writer. So there's not been the same writer for any game. So the first game was me doing the backstory. So based around this Dracula. So I wrote this 2-page backstory. So then Mikael, who was the writer at that point, sort of took that and sort of filled out the gaps. And so that was just on him to do as he pleased. Then came A Machine for Pigs, where Dan just took it. I mean, I don't know if I'm like stupid, but I didn't like check anything with that story. Like, yeah, Dan knows this thing. So like, there's gonna be creepy stuff in there and crazy shit. So that's all good. And so on. So I just went all in, and then for Rebirth, most of the story is first. So Ian Thomas, the writer for that one, did a baseline, and then obviously Fredrik came in and did some of that. And the bunker is similar to Dark Descent, where you did a framing. So that was your story, Fredrik, and then Philip was the writer on that, came in and sort of filled the gaps. So I'm not sure who came up with that, but every writer sort of read what the previous writer wrote and then filled in their own interpretation, which I think is pretty Lovecraftian if you sort of I find. So that's where you have that sort of scattered, where some things are picked up and put into new trails and so on. So which is sort of interesting, I guess. So there's always been someone new ideas and thinking about where to take the story and the next game and what aspect they liked from the previous games and sort of put it into a new context. So where that star-shaped stone is, you know, that's the sort of hive mind of everyone who touched the game that knows that. So it's a sort of mystery, some subconscious zeitgeist that's manifests itself.
Yeah, that's the thing. I actually had much fun tracking the thing since in all of the obviously Amnesia wiki and in the short stories in the DLC and see where it was at each point, and it really grew on me, and I was like, I mean, it's at every point of the story,
but
and
what's
we
the
never
point
see
of
it
the
once.
Yeah, but it's a mystery to me as well, actually. Yeah, so which makes it a double mystery. So I can't tell you anything. Yeah? I don't know. Do you have any insight, Fredrik?
No idea. It's gonna remain a mystery.
No,
to me.
yes, it's totally. It's like I'm not sure who
But
said
keep
it.
following it. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. I'm very curious now.
And if
Now
you
I
find the
wanna know.
answer, please let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Because we were really into it, like, okay, it was here and it's mentioned here. What's the point with this stone? How it connect every Amnesia game? There is something we missed about the stone, but okay.
I guess, yeah.
Well,
nothing more to
probably
it.
is something, but I sort of, I mean, that's what I like about sort of stories when there is like even I sort of what I like often and sort of often do with the parts of the stories that I've had input on is that you add things where you are not sure what this is. And then you sort of leave it to someone else who has to interpret this. So you just, I sort of, that's one thing that I sort of love doing, where this is like a stupid example of it, but you sort of say, yeah, so this guy is from La La Land. And you just write that as if La La Land exists. So then a writer takes it and says, La La Land? What the fuck is La La Land? And then there's some other hints to it. And then they went wild with it. And then that sort of grows organically almost. So there is like a core point that exists, and that everyone who looks at it gets their own thing from it. But it's sort of because it has to stay consistent. It's sort of like when you know that sort of children's game when you fold and everyone like gets to see a figure, and you only see sort of a sort of small portion of it, and then you unfold it and there's like something else. There's something like that happening, which is cool because it has to stay consistent. So it's its own thing. It's alive in its own right. There's some universe where it exists.
I can totally see you guys having a dedicated room only with a big board with the strings to follow this stone around.
Yeah, but that's fun. I love that. That's awesome.
That's here.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Do you want to ask the last question? I have another one that I want to ask you that I did not write, but yeah, go ahead.
I have another one also, but I will ask this one. That's the last question we have prepared, but after we have one other question each. Is there consequences other than visual when we die in multiple time in Amnesia Rebirth?
Do you want to take that, Fredrik?
Only then, what do you mean visual? In Amnesia Rebirth, there is the consequence of Tasi turning more into a monster every time. So it's basically also, I think, if I'm not mistaken now, but I think the end. So it's the end. I hate the fact that I've seen a lot of Let's Plays miss this, but the end picture that comes when the end credits rolls is different depending on which ending you've chosen. And one of them, I think, has a variation also depending on how ghoulish you are when you end the game. And also, if you look into the fountain in the Dark World in the final area, the fountain just beneath the elevators, you can see how ghoulish you've turned. So you can check your reflection in the fourth level, like in the hub for the fourth level. You can check the reflection in a fountain there and see how you look as a normal person, and then depending on how you play the game, you can see how ghoulish you are. And what we wanted is like, okay, bring this into the equation of what you choose to do at the end. If you've turned a lot into a monster, you feel like, okay, I can't take care of this child, for example. Or if you haven't turned so much, maybe you have a different feeling to it. So it's just an added variable to it. Apart from that, there is no difference as far as I remember now.
Okay, interesting. So I have a question about, you might know, but no, not this, but we made a video about the game Talos Principle last year, and while we were making it just called so much to Soma, in our opinion. I don't know if you played it. If you didn't, I really urge you to play it. That's an incredible game. It uses the same thematics, the same themes, sorry, as Soma, but it's like inverted, where in Soma you like grow into becoming something. Something like an AI. In Talos Principle, it is the opposite. You are an AI, and you just trying to get out of simulated world. So, what do you think about it? And if you played it, and if you know what I'm talking about?
I played. I haven't played the entire, but I've like watched the ending, and I've checked it a bit, so I know quite a bit about it, and it's very cool. It's also interesting how it's connected to us. So Tom, who is one of the writers, was the writer for Penumbra, and Jonas, who's the other writer, was someone I knew, like talked to when I made my first game. He's actually one of the first that wrote me feedback to the first horror game. Right? So it's pretty cool that both of them, like, because they're both like very connected to my own time as a developer. But yeah, I mean, hard to say anything about it, but I think that it is a cool game, and they have some interesting ideas in that. And it's also interesting, like it's almost like the whole Deep Impact versus what's the other one with Bruce Willis again? Help me out, someone. What's it? The asteroid movie. Someone must know what it is.
Armageddon.
Armageddon.
Yeah.
Armageddon. So they came at the same time. So it's like so this game also came at the same time, but it's differently with laid out with the puzzles and so on. And it's sort of interesting how they merge themes and so on. I think again, it also, just to go back to the beginning. Talos Principle is a very game that there is puzzles, and they're sort of built into the story, but they're really hard to. You don't solve a puzzle, at least none that I know of, and get into the existential questions in solving and interacting with the puzzles. But the puzzle solving itself, on a meta level, sort of ties into the storyline. Whereas, which is like, and then you sort of separate that. So when you're not solving a puzzle, and you don't have to think about much else, you can sort of put the story in sort of like two separate lane almost that sort of connect between on a meta level. But in Soma, our thing has been more the scene thing. We want first person involvement, playing through these moments in a different thing. Yeah. So I think those are sort of things that sort of set aside. So it's interesting. I think by looking at that game and how it's designed and comparing it to Soma gives a lot of insight into how we think about building stories and experiences. That's my sort of only thought, like at the moment.
Okay, that's funny because the games came out like a year apart, and I remember vividly that there is an entry where they almost called the project in the game, the game, the Talos project. They called it Soma at first.
Yeah. I mean, Jonas is Greek, so I'm guessing it has to do with that. So he's just using his the Greek words and stuff. So, but I mean, I'm that's always cool. But I mean, it's not that weird that word would pop up at some point. But it's still, yeah, it's funny. How it's connected. Again, it's this sort of, we like the star-shaped thing. It's the sort of like a hive mind and zeitgeist that comes into being.
Yeah, I might not recover from that.
If you're okay, I have a last question. It's more about the video games industries in general. You said when you make a game, you have, of course, to have a good idea what you could commit to make the project of a game. And sometimes it's a reaction to other games which you think you can put some other point of view to increase the experience you can have in a game. And do you have an opinion about the last video game we had the last few years? Like we had Alan Wake 2, the remake of Dead Space, Resident Evil. We had some pretty interesting games also in the Independence studio. So do you have an opinion about the horror game we had the last few years?
You mean horror game genre in general?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's such a huge question. I guess. I mean, if I begin, if you or you want to start, Fredrik? Do you have any like spontaneous thoughts that pop up?
No, just a spontaneous thought. Like if you have discovered a game, if you feel interested about the last game who came out, or disappointed, or just if you had some good discover.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. Were mine? I must have. No, my brain is. I mean, there has been a lot of cool stuff coming out. I'm just thinking about. Perhaps you have more clearer thoughts than I can let my brain grind. With Fredrik, if you have any.
By the way, if you want to send us your thoughts later by mail or anything, go ahead.
Yeah,
It's possible.
I have some thoughts actually, but I wouldn't like to go into specific games. Instead, I think for me personally, it's a reaction to games as a whole, in a way where we see. So maybe not the horror genre specifically, but other like games industry where the budgets for the games are increasing. They are becoming very big. They need to cater to a big audience in order to make the money back. And certain aspects of games has become a bit hand-holdy, so to say, in my opinion, where I think if we want to take this to a broader talk, and you guys are into cinema, and if we look at games, not versus cinema, but in relation to cinema, in my opinion, where games really shine is that we can actually, like, if you watch a movie, read a book or whatever, you are the audience. But games is for me, the only place, the only medium where you can actually try and transfer the person into the actual situation. And that, I think, for example, The Bunker has been for me personally the leading star in how to approach that and make it less hand-holdy, make it less like the games that I used to play as a kid, where I had to experiment to find my solutions, where I felt a challenge. I think games should be challenging and they should be rewarding, because challenge and reward comes together. If there's a challenge, there is a stronger sense of reward that you actually did something yourself instead of following instructions or trying to identify what the game designer tried to do here. And then comes the immersion point, which I think is in relation to movies an important thing. You can get immersed in a movie as well, but of course you don't partake in the same way. You're still a viewer. But if you look at the game and trying to really emphasize on the immersion, I think it's become like the test in Bunker, for example, was the more decisions, like natural decisions that tie into what the player actually want to do, the more decisions we can have the player do in a short amount of time as possible. Both the macro decisions on planning where to go next, reading notes, identifying when to use fuel in your generator, but then the micro decisions that you go through when the second you walk out the safe room, you come out there, you have your flashlight, and I even say that even deciding not to pull the flashlight is a decision for the player. And the more of these decisions, because that might lure the monster to your location, and those things are what really puts the player into that space. I think the more of those kind of decisions that we can occupy the player's brain with takes the player into this immersion and into these games. So for me, that is kind of where I would like to see more games try and actually approach that space, to immerse the player, to even kind of forget that they're playing a game, and being, if they get really scared by the bunker, then I'm happy, because then we've succeeded in the immersion. You can't get fear without a certain amount of immersion. So of course I've also ran the bunker project for the last 2 years, so I haven't played any other games during that time because it was a busy project. But I mean, so I have very limited thoughts on specific games, but this is kind of my leading star and where I hope to be able to delve more into further on within the studio and with our next projects.
I have a really
Sorry, go ahead.
No. I just had a really weird comment on everything, but I mean that's my. I just checked what Fredrik was talking about, what I played and was there any standouts, and there was a lot. Yet as a standout, by the way, I played Forgotten City recently, which was really cool. It's a very, very interesting game. You ever played that? So you're in a time loop.
Which game? I don't remember the title. What's the title?
Forgotten City. Yeah.
The Forgotten City.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Of course. That was really cool. So that was an interesting in how they wove narrative. It's very janky as well, but I mean, there's 3 guys who made it, so it's still very cool.
Yeah.
But my current weird thinking, I need to go back, by the way. I have a growing list of people I want to contact. But one thing that I've always been interested in games is, I remember, so one thing that really fit into my head. So I forced my wife to play Silent Hills. She and I put a controller in her hands, I can't play this shit. And then I took the controller away, and then it's oh, this is fine now. And then I put it back as an experiment. She was afraid again. So it's interesting how that is sort of what Fredrik goes back in all of these sort of minor decisions, and that you actually have to make the input and are not handhold. Even though in Silent Hill she was just walking through the forest at the beginning of the game in Silent Hill 2. Something weird happens that's you get immersed in this, and so my weird thinking, in terms of how war games are and what you're thinking about it, is that that you have in some cultures they come across psychedelics. Now, as I said, it's going to be weird, but so they come across psychedelics. And what happens is that these cultures, they see this as a way of connecting with their gods, with nature, like something profound. You can see it in Native Americans. There's other cultures as well, and then it sort of goes into that. When it goes into the wider public at some point, it becomes a sort of party drug instead. It's just like, wow, look at all this weird shit happening. And so I'm in my head somewhere, I'm like feeling like there is something in games. There's something in games that has that effect. And we're sort of not utilizing it enough. We're sort of still treating the whole interactive immersions thingy as a sort of party drug. Like, in some cases, like almost a literal party drug. And I'm like, I would like to see more games that takes themselves overly serious and thinking like, this is our things to become one with nature, to like communicate with whatever you feel like are gods or whatever is that. And so I mean, this is sort of like I said it was going to be weird, but I'm so my thinking is that there is like a sort of unexplored thingy, and the thing that sort of annoyed me is that in the past, in early 2000s, 2010, somewhere around that, there was this debate that people don't like today, which was story versus games. So players, the games can't tell stories or anything like that. And now, and that sort of in some cases said it was like that debate is no longer. And I have the sense that game industry at large feel like they solved it, which annoys me because they didn't. We just sort of dropped the conversation, and how annoying some of these arguments were, why you couldn't, and so on, and what is a game, and people like, all of these discussions, and I sort of like feel like we sort of lost something, and I'm sort of like all these two sort of weird things, like in the sense that it would be interesting to be perhaps a bit more critical of what we're doing in games, and like set our gaze a bit higher and what we're trying to achieve with them. And I know there are developers that sort of are doing this and so on, but I'm sort of not feeling that we're there yet. And I don't know if that's like, this is a pipe dream of mine or whatever, but that's my sort of sense of where we're what's sort of wrong and where we should be heading. Like more let's evoke some weird shit from games. Let's make us feel things that we couldn't do in any other media and stuff like that, and not just go away. And I'm feeling we're perhaps not taking enough risks and so on. That's my weird thought.
Okay.
I mean that links to what Fredrik was saying. That I mean the budget are much more higher than ever before, and that limits the risk in some way. So yeah, I get it, but at the same time, I feel like there is an audience for that, and for difficult games, for
yeah, totally. Like
not holding hands.
When these stuff come out, like I'm just there's some of these games that you don't feel is gonna work. Like what's its game? I think it's Undertale.
Oh.
Which is one of those games where it's like a huge success, but on the paper it's like it's just mad, but it's just lovely that we can that went through, and I think that's also one of those games where I think it's a super brilliant game, and you can sort of see those things poking out. But I'm like, I feel like we could perhaps do even more. But there totally is an audience, yes, for these stuff, and it's often when people take risks, it's perhaps they're not taking enough risks, like it's not going all the way to really reach where it should.
Yeah. Well, that works for games like Elden Ring or Lethal Company. I don't know if you heard of it.
Yeah.
You might have.
Yeah, but that's also cool.
Not holding hands.
Yes, and also overall, like kids have grown up with Minecraft. Like, have you tried playing Minecraft? Off the shelves. Like, it's so much. You have to learn the like. I think they're a bit more streamlined now, but previously you have to learn recipes and stuff like that. And people just you go all in and learn these things. There's a huge, like, say, League of Legends and so on. People are like prepared to do these things, but they like, and that's perhaps not taken advantage of enough either, to learn this. So I mean, Bunker is a really cool example of that as well, where there's a lot of
Totally.
you have to learn a lot of stuff at a very short period of time. What people and if you don't learn those things, you're going to be the game is very unkind to you. But people still do that. So it's very. I think there is an interesting way forward that, and not just in saying the difficulty should be high, but you can expect more from players than what you might think you can.
And that's where
Yeah.
the reward comes from. I mean, if you watch a movie, maybe the reward is that you watched and managed to watch a horror movie or whatever. But if you manage to craft a Molotov in the bunker and throw it at the right moment and stop the monster from getting to you or whatever, that's the reward, and you feel like you did it. You didn't get it handed to you on a silver platter, so to say. So I think that's and Elden Ring, I think, is a good. I haven't played myself, but I think also it's a hard game. But it's also up to the players to experiment and learn.
You see it in other games as well, like Origin, for instance, which is also requires a lot from the players. Like, you're gonna guess the names of 30 crew members. Like, your brains explode, but then you get into it and you can do it, and like, that's game sold really, really well.
And immersive sims like Prey and Dishonored and these also leave a lot of learning.
And it's interesting. So because Prey, which is much less handheld, like in some ways like worse designed, is held in higher regards than something like Deathloop, which is like more tightly designed, because it's like, yeah, we want to make sure that everyone gets a good experience. We want to get them learning and so on. And you so you can also see that. I mean, people complain that about us is like, we want to get a Penumbra game back, and it's like, oh no, but it's so badly designed, and that's sort of what they like. that it is like, but don't you like? There's all of these weird shit. It's like, yeah, but that's what I love about it. So like, you didn't think it through.
But I think this is a reaction to the industry maybe going a bit more to the cinematics. I mean, certain games, I don't want to mention any names, but there are cutscenes. It's like very similar to watching a movie. You have a companion with you throughout the game who, even before you manage to take in a puzzle, maybe he says, "Oh, look up there," and I mean, that goes. Then you, in a certain sense, it sounds harsh, but you can just watch the movie instead, if that's the experience you want. Games has a different thing to offer us, that I hope, really hope more studios will delve even further in. And I'm not saying do it the same way as we do, but there's tons of ways that we can bring the true essence of what a game actually offers us into the experiences that the industry creates. Yeah. Wow. Philosophical stuff at the end of this.
That's I get what you're going for, and it's I mean, I agree. I also am in the video game industry, and yeah, that's exactly the way I I want to make games as well. So yeah.
So
Fine.
for first, I'm sorry to rush the end, but I have to go. But thank you for your time. Really, that was a really precious information, and that was really also a precious moment. So thank you to share your point of view and your expertise on the game in general and Amnesia. That was really a pleasure to talk and exchange with you. That was really amazing. So so I think we will end the call here. We'll stop the recording soon. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you guys. I
Yeah.
had fun. It's fun. We rarely get the chance to talk like this. So
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank
Fun
you a lot,
conversation.
really.
Yeah. Have a nice day. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Have a
for talking.
nice day as well.
Have
We
a
will
nice day
tell
too.
you when the video comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Perfect.
so yeah, thank you again.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
yeah, have a
Stay in
nice day.
touch.
bye.
Bye.